Hey everyone, welcome to our first ever staging DBT Demo Day. Really glad to have you all with us. If you're not in there already, join us on the DBT Slack. Check out the channel DBT Demo Day to follow along, ask questions, learn from each other in the chat as we go. My name is Drew Banin. I'm one of the co-founders here at Fishtown Analytics. I run our product team. My LinkedIn tagline has said "Mo data, mo problems" for going on 7 years now, and I have no intentions of changing it. We're really excited to host this event and work with all of you today. You know, nearly 5 years ago, Tristan, Connor, and I started doing this thing together. From the beginning, we talked about building a company that could last for decades. And you can imagine in the first couple of months, we didn't have 10 of anything. And 10 years was a pretty long time to imagine. So it was a little bit of a meme, but the days, the months, the year, they add up. The years, they add up. And we're about 5 years into this multi-decade journey we're on. So today we have an incredible and growing team. We're backed by some really incredible investors. We have a wonderful, engaged, and just like so kind community. I'm like just really excited to jump in and join the chat with you all today. And today we're going to do a little bit of talking about what's new and exciting in the DBT world. We're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up in the future, what our team's working on, what kinds of things are interesting to you all. And so the thing I want to point to is after we raised our Series B, Tristan penned a blog post titled "A License to Build the Future." We want to talk about building that future with you all today. And I've got some backup as we talk about these things together. So please meet the product team here at Fishtown Analytics. This is Jeremy Cohen, our product manager for Dbt Core. We've got Simon Ouderkirk who's going to be speaking with us about Dbt Cloud. And the newest addition to the team is Bar Your Own, another product manager for Dbt Cloud. You're going to hear from all of us at one point or another about the things we're working on, the things that are exciting. So quick run through the agenda. Jeremy is going to kick us off with things you might have missed in the Dbt Core world. Really excited for that piece. Simon and Neha from Mode Analytics are going to give us a little of a sneak peek at a demo of a really great integration with Mode Analytics. And then we're going to hear a little bit from Simon and Joel about a little demo that they've cooked up for you as well. Finally, I'm going to jump back in, talk about what's on the way, looking a little bit to the future and the roadmap. Then we're going to do some breakout discussions to make sure that we can hear from all of you about what's exciting on the top of your minds. So to start us off, we're going to have Jeremy Cohen come on up and talk to us about some of the recent launches in the Dbt Core world and some of the feedback we've been getting and want to get in the future.
Thanks so much, Drew. You know, looking back all those years ago, if you'd have told me that we'd find ourselves here today, who would have believed it? I guess us. Let me just go ahead and close that so we don't have to see that. My name's Jeremy. I am the product manager for Dbt Core, which is at the heart of everything we do here and hopefully at the heart of a lot of what you folks do as well in the modern data stack. I've got my little tagline here, got artifacts, which meant something very different to me back when I was studying ancient civilizations by means of their material cultures. And I really wanted this whole event to be archaeology themed, but we can't always get what we want. So starting us off, and sorry about that, we've got a brand new version of DBT out in the world, version 0.19.0. A big thank you to the core development team, to the cast and crew, as well as 21 unique contributors out there in the world. That's the most we've ever had. Really hats off to all of as 150 folks out there who tested out beta versions of DBT, version of 0.19.0. That's about 5% of all the projects that we've got using DBT on a weekly basis today. That's really good. That gives us a really healthy cross sample of different database adapters, different project types and sizes and ways that folks are using DBT today. And that's really, really crucial to help us make sure that we are not going to be breaking projects when we release new versions out into the world. So I've got an ask for everyone here who has not yet upgraded to 0.19.0, which I think might be a lot of you. Please try upgrading soon. There are some pretty cool things in the new release that we'll talk a little more about. And then I've got an ask for even more of you which is to join our DBT pre-releases channel in Slack. There are now more than 10,000 folks who are in our channel to find out about new ready-to-release final versions out there in the world. We've only got about 260 are actually in the pre-releases channel. Please join. Please help us test new versions of DBT. I'll be dropping an announcement in that pre-releases channel very, very soon about a beta version of 0.19.1 that may or may not parse a lot faster than 0.19.0. So it is in your interest and mine to join that channel and help us out. But not just us. You're helping all of us, everybody here. We all build DBT together, as indicated in this beautiful GIF. Thank you, Lauren. Community members like you contribute not just exciting features like hard deletes and snapshots, new Jinja modules, new UI components in the DBT docs DAGViz. You help us catch bugs, regressions, and missing pieces. You also help us with your opinions, your thoughts, your reactions, communicated in Slack and in GitHub issues and in discourse and wherever else DBT conversations take place. Stack Overflow nowadays. Your opinions don't just matter in a kind of ethereal, intangible way. There are real impacts to weighing in with your thoughts on new features. In particular, Slim CI, which we released in version 0.18.0 last fall through a couple of what we were calling beta features, things that we knew worked in a broad sense, the really stable foundation, but we were going to need your feedback, your battle testing, your metal testing to make sure that all the rough edges could be polished away. And so you did that. You tested out Slim CI, found all sorts of little corner cases that we wanted to get ourselves around. And so we made those changes and heard you. And version 0.19.0 of DBT includes some upgrades to Slim CI to handle tests, being able to run your full test suite in CI, being able to coordinate seed and model changes from the same PR, and so on and so on. The same goes for the feature flag in DBT Cloud. Thank you to everyone who is a DBT Cloud user, has requested that flag, has benefited from much, much faster continuous integration builds, and also gave us helpful feedback along the way, which we are incorporating and have plans to take that flag off very soon. So I say Slim CI because this is an example of a time when your feedback was really vital to the process of Dbt Core development, of refining a feature that exists in a really essential way in one of these new versions of DBT. But it's also part of a larger theme, DBT metadata. And as I hinted at earlier, DBT artifacts in particular. Slim CI benefits, or really is powered by DBT artifacts, which are an artifact really of the very first version of the DBT docs website, the auto-generated documentation site. Every DBT invocation since September 2018 has produced these really rich JSON files with information about all the objects in your project, information about metadata gleaned from the database, as well as your most recent run of models or tests or seeds or snapshots or whatever the case may be. Now, some very adventurous and enterprising folks early on saw these JSON files being produced and thought, there's some pretty interesting stuff in here. Maybe I'll use it as a way to understand what's going on in my DBT project or in my data pipelines. That's cool. That is not necessarily something that we saw coming all the way back then, but it's definitely something we care about supporting now. You see, I see some messages more and more often like, hey, has anybody else noticed you can parse the manifest to find all the parents and children of a given model in your project? Yeah, I guess you can. But with that, we decided to release version 1 of DBT artifacts in version 0.19.0. So these are now versioned. They will not break except in minor releases and with some advance warning, and they are documented. So it should be very, very clear going forward what has actually changed version to version. We want you to keep building cool stuff that leverages DBT artifacts, leverages these JSON files, in such a way that there won't be surprises, and it's easier to build and extend and maintain that stuff. So what stuff are we talking about? Well, there's stuff in DBT already. There's SlimCI, there's the doc site, there's, just lots of things, and we're going to keep building more and more of them. But there's also stuff out there in the world that community members have been building. Stuff like, and some of these really bring me a lot of joy, the Oliver Twist package or plugin out there that can analyze DAG modularity, inspired by my colleague Christine's Coalesce talk. Very cool. The ability to set quality expectations, again, by parsing the manifest. And this is really neat, something that we've been working on just the last couple of weeks, or I'll give credit where it's due. Niall from Tails has created a package that will analyze runtimes from runresults.json and find which models have had the longest runtime, which ones are bottlenecking in a project. This is a much, much more efficient approach to analyzing model runtimes than some of the more traditional mechanisms that involved lots of insert statements or update statements running in hooks. Just not super performant in analytical databases. What are Snowflake and BigQuery and the rest really good at? Well, loading in, ingesting some JSON files, and being able to do really compelling analysis on top of them. So definitely check out that package. Check out some of the recent commentary that's been floating around Slack about ways to upload your run results if you're using dbt Cloud. Maybe there's a Snowflake put command. I don't know, say no more. So dbt can leverage artifacts. You can leverage artifacts as a dbt project maintainer to better understand the resources that you're working with. And a lot of your colleagues can as well. Dashboard viewers maybe want to know about, is the data powering that dashboard as fresh or as well tested, as rigorous as they think it is? Other downstream data consumers using BI tools, using data science or ML pipelines, using one-off ad hoc analyses that were maybe never meant to live around as long as they did. If you've been following along with recent dbt version releases, this may sound familiar, or if you've been on Twitter recently. Exposures. Really the first dbt feature, someone can correct me if I'm wrong here, the first dbt feature that is metadata above all. Now, what really is an exposure? We've got these powerful waterways, these rivers, is how often we talk about them, of data flowing from sources all the way downstream into BI tools, into data science pipelines, ML processing, who knows what, applications, or again, the analysis that's lived a couple of years past its expiration date. Exposures are a way to define and light the way. They are nexuses of really, really rich information to say all these models and sources and tests, these all have something to do with the use of this specific data downstream. If your data is like the Schuylkill River, then maybe it's a lighthouse very much like this one in, say it with me, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Oh, this lets you as a dbt project maintainer see how your project, how the resources in it are being exposed. This is a screenshot of a DAG from our internal analytics project. I guess it looks kind of like a boot. And so we've got a couple of exposures, just 4 so far. One here is along the laces, and then 2 along the toe, and then, okay, maybe this is another lace down by the bottom right. It's not all the way tied, that's okay. We can see all the blue and green nodes here, all the models and sources that are somehow powering downstream uses of our data that we have deemed sufficiently rigorous and well acknowledged to give them things like owners, things like maturity levels, things like URL links directly from the docs. Now, maybe you're seeing this and thinking, Jeremy just talked about artifacts. Now he's talking about exposures. dbt knows a lot about all those green source nodes and whether they're fresh, or at least it could if we had freshness expectations and ran them on a regular basis. It definitely knows a lot about those blue model nodes or sources or seeds, and whether their tests have passed recently. And it actually stores all that information in these really rich, now versioned, now documented JSON artifacts. And then that's maybe as far as the thought goes. maybe you see what I'm putting down, and then maybe I'm going to let Simon pick it up for me in a couple of minutes. For the moment, I want to take just a step back and talk a little bit about Dbt Core versus, let's say, Dbt Cloud. We're talking about features like Slim CI that have the version in core, and then also I mentioned a feature flag in cloud. How do we decide what goes where? How do we decide what goes open source? It's actually a really easy decision because we make it in a clear, consistent, and principled way. Dbt Core is everything to do with connecting, compiling, and executing SQL against a data warehouse. It's fully featured, can be used completely on its own, and it's agnostic as to its own deployment. So there's lots and lots of ways to use it. We want this to be the place that people store their most critical business logic, and it is essential. If we want that to be the case, and we do, that it stays open source forever. Dbt Cloud is one stable, opinionated way to deploy Dbt Core. It provides compelling user experiences and interfaces. It handles identity and access, and it handles things like state, things like persisting information between runs, between users, things you can only do if you've got a backing application database. That's how we decide. And so does metadata change all that? I said the word state there, but no, it doesn't change it at all. For artifact-powered features like Slim CI, like exposures, like all the other ones that are to come, the core mechanisms are just that. They are core. They are open source now and forever. It is totally possible to replicate any and all of this functionality in any competent deployment. Dbt Cloud gives one opinionated approach, our way of thinking how to do it, and it does so with a backing of stability, handling the legwork behind the scenes. Here I've got a screenshot from Niles for Tails. A lot of good stuff from him today. A screenshot from a DBT office hours back in the fall about using Slim CI in a non-cloud deployment. Totally possible. As long as you can persist and find the artifact, it can happen. And then we've got down on the bottom a screenshot from, still behind a feature flag, the Dbt Cloud answer to Slim CI, which looks like a dropdown that you point to a different job and say, I want the manifest from this other job's most recent successful build. We'll find the artifact, we'll handle the legwork, we'll make sure it goes where it needs to, and set the environment variables such that you just get to say, I want to run only my modified models. So I'm going to hand it over to one of my colleagues and even good friends, if I'm allowed to say that, Simon. A little bit of what's to come, maybe picking up on a galaxy brain earlier on, and to show, again, that one opinionated approach to a core DBT feature and how we're thinking about this going forward. No further ado.
Hi, Jeremy. I accept your friend request. Hello, everyone. It's me, Simon, one of the product managers at Fishtown for Dbt Cloud. Really excited to be welcoming a new member of the product org as well. And that's me, arguably the least interesting slide avatar, but perhaps most interesting tagline. I did study philosophy in school. These days, much more interested in kind of remote work and, of course, the modern data stack. So let's talk about it. So this is a fact. Metadata is like a huge part of the conversation right now. It's on Twitter, it's happening in Slack, it's happening, I assume, on landline phone calls as well. Hard to verify that. And the fact is there's so much potential on this and there's so much energy around it. And it really does feel like between exposures and the metadata API, we've got like a real kind of secret sauce here. We've got something really exciting, kind of boundlessly, there's so much potential. It's just a very exciting space. And I think it's really interesting to kind of ground it in a much bigger idea, a much bigger kind of vision of DBT as like a modern data stack neighbor, which is to say, DBT is in this really unique position in that when you put it inside your data stack, when it goes into this modern data stack, it represents an opportunity to add value to every other part of the stack that includes it. And it feels like metadata is such an interesting way to unlock more ways to start doing that. And in this way, I kind of want to pull on this idea of kind of metadata via the kind of exposures mechanism as a way of expanding value and even creating value. And not just creating value within the data organization, not just within the sort of hands of your analytics engineers, and not even just within your data stack. I really genuinely believe that this kind of work, this kind of metadata exposing, I suppose you could say, to sort of continue with the metaphor, is actually going to also generate more value within your organization. Why is that important? And kind of a better question is, how do we know that? Like, what makes me think that metadata and the way that it can communicate important things within your organization, like, why do I think that's important? What generates that idea in my heart? Well, I mean, we already saw a tweet from Seth during Jeremy's talk, so it wouldn't be a Fishtown presentation without a tweet from Taylor, of course. And like, this is how we know, like, this experience, this sort of broad sense of uncertainty and lack of trust within data organizations is really endemic right now. And it's resulting in kind of a lot of bad conversations, and a lot of bad conversations in both directions, right? Like, the problem that's being described here isn't just a source of pain for people working in data and analytics. It's also a source of pain for their consumers, for their stakeholders. And that's really important. And that's something that, like, we need to honor and recognize as a real problem. And like, I don't mean to downplay kind of awkward conversations at work, but I mean, as recently as 2016, IBM, which is a big computer company you've probably heard of, they reported that they believe that over $3 trillion has been sort of lost in the modern economy. This was in 2016 due to bad information. So that's opportunity cost, making wrong decisions, taking too long to make a choice. That's a lot of money. So when we talk about like this tweet, like, it's a great tweet. It's one of the all-time great tweets, let's be honest. But it's also a much bigger problem, and a much bigger problem with a very big dollar sign attached to it. So let's kind of talk about what we want to do about it. So this is just our take, right? We're taking DBT and we're taking some of the value, some of the stuff that we know about our data being generated in the DBT project, and we're just pushing it next door. We're just pushing it forward, right? We're putting it into the BI layer, and we're just doing it with a little postage stamp card that says, hey, as far as we know, we've got these tests in place. We've got the source freshness in place. We've got other mechanisms which are feeding up into a single little Christmas light for you. And if the Christmas light's green, you can be confident. You can make your media buy, and we can just sort of remove the uncertainty from the equation. That's great. That's awesome. It means that no longer are you going to have these conversations which are unpredictable in terms of when they occur and unpredictable in terms of how long they take to resolve. That is that, like, hey, can you take a look at this? Excuse me. Sorry. Can you just come take a look at this for a second? Does this look right to you? Doesn't seem right to me. Can you take a look? Like, you don't have to do that anymore, because now data consumers within your company can have direct access to this sort of top line level of data quality. Interestingly, it does put a little bit of an onus back on the analytics organization to make sure things are being appropriately tested, that all of this stuff does bubble up into a reliable indicator. And so let's see kind of how this idea can also result in a little bit more of like a deep dive, something that's a little bit more full featured. So we've also developed what we're calling like the data health landing page. The name is TBD. We're working on names. But they can't all be exposures, right? Like, that's such a hit. It's hard to follow exposures. But broadly, the idea here is this represents a sort of next step, a sort of deep dive into what is underneath that bubbling up of data quality. And this is going to allow your like power users, your real like data savvy folks within the org, to start having like more and better conversations with the data organization. And really, like, at the end of the day, like, you're never going to get away from conversing with your stakeholders. Like, it's super duper important. But metadata can start to power way better conversations, and conversations that are less ambiguous, sort of conversations that are less grounded in like fear and uncertainty, and more grounded in like improving the process. How can we be sure? How can we add better tests, and sort of improving over time, rather than just sort of being on the hamster wheel of uncertainty, because I think we kind of all would like to avoid that. It also creates a much more transparent situation where it becomes a conversation about what is working over time and what's not working over time. We're really excited about this. This has been something that kind of we see a lot of emergent energy around the potential of metadata, especially coming out of Coalesce this year. And these are sort of the interesting ways. This is our sort of first crack at it. This is our opinion. This is what we think is like one way that we can generate certainty, we can generate business value out of this sort of bigger metadata picture with the DBT project. I will say I'm super, super stoked to introduce Neha from Mode, who are taking their very own opinionated position on how this can generate value sort of in partnership with DBT.
Thanks, Simon.
Sure.
Hey, everyone. My name is Neha, and I am a product manager at Mode. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about how we're using the Metadata API to surface data freshness from DBT in Mode reports. So let's jump into it. All right, so first off, what is Mode? Many of you may be familiar with Mode, but in case you're not, Mode is an advanced analytics solution that provides the ideal environment for an analyst workflow. So that includes writing SQL, analysis in Python and R notebooks, visualizing results, and then sharing those insights, all in a single seamless experience. Mode and DBT together. So Mode is basically an analytics and BI layer that sits on top of DBT. So you can take the models and the business logic that you've built in DBT to do complex analysis, build out dashboards, reports, and other data tools so that stakeholders can answer their own questions. And Mode and DBT have always worked well together, and we really have this focus on increasing the velocity and the reliability of data-driven decisions. And so we're really excited to be working on this integration to take that sort of partnership one step further. So here's what we built. This is an integration that leverages DBT's Metadata API, and we're surfacing data freshness directly in Mode. So we're going to show two views of data freshness. The first is at the report level, so you can see a summary of the freshness of the source data that's powering the report. And then the second shows you when source data was last updated for each of the tables that are used in the report. So why did we build it? We have heard from a lot of analysts in Mode that it can be challenging to communicate information to stakeholders about how fresh the data is, what the quality of the data in the report that they're viewing and exploring is. They'll have questions like, does this reflect leads from yesterday afternoon? And we want to give them a way to answer those questions themselves. And we want to increase their trust and confidence in the data that they're viewing. And then we also want to make it easier for analysts to convey this information. So, rather than getting those questions about leads, they can focus more on answering those more complex questions like, why are leads down week over week, right? Instead of asking about, does the data include leads? So really it's about freeing up analysts and stakeholders to use the data in these reports to answer the more complex questions. And this in turn helps everyone in the organization make better decisions faster. All right, so let's jump into a demo. So this is a Mode report. And at the top, you will see a timestamp for the last successful run, as well as when the source data was last loaded from DBT. And then if you go into view details, there is a new section that surfaces the tables that are mapped back to sources in DBT. And then you'll see some timestamps for when the source data was last loaded for those. And then we've also surfaced errors in case there's a raw table that's used in the report or one that's not modeled. So then if you run the report again, you'll see that the run timestamp is updated, and you'll continue to see the source data freshness. All right, that's all from me. Thank you all so much. This feature is currently in beta and will be coming soon, so stay tuned. I'll hand things back to Simon now.
All right. Thanks so much. Let me sort of get this wound up here. I actually don't have access for, let's see if we can get this going. There we go. All right. Sorry, y'all. It's my first time with a laptop. I swear it's going great. Super excited right now. I had an opportunity to sit down with one of my like favorite folks in the community. I mean, I love everyone I've met in the community, but let's be honest, like Joel's in my top 8. If I still had MySpace, Joel would be in my top 8. And we've been talking a lot about exposures. So we actually ended up recording a little conversation between he and I. It is very early for Joel. He's in New Zealand, so he is hanging out in Slack here, but the conversation is pre-recorded. So he and I will both be sort of jamming with y'all on Slack. Let's take a look. All right, Joel, here we are. Amazing. In the flesh.
Sure.
Kind of in the flesh.
Such that it is.
I'm really excited to talk to you today. We've got a bunch of different things that I kind of want to cover and not a tremendous amount of time. But I think the very most important thing is we should start with you and sort of who you are and like what your journey has been and sort of what kind of things you're working on right now.
Sure. So I'm in Wellington in New Zealand. I work for a company called Education Perfect, which makes online learning tools for students in Australia, New Zealand, Asia, Middle East. We've got a bit over 1 million students using EP around the world. We were one of the fortunate companies in that it turns out that e-learning is a great business to be in right now, the world being what it is. So we've actually been growing quite rapidly over the last 12 months and for that as well. I've been at EP for coming up on 10 years. I started in the customer support team, have done like literally every job along the way, and have been in the data space for about a year and really been enjoying it. Significantly helped by the fact that we got to start from the outset actually using DBT and just doing everything properly right from the outset instead of having to fix a little bit janky deployed original setup.
That is really unusual, right? To kind of build something from scratch.
Yeah, it was a really fortunate position for us to be in. I think we got started with this. The team at Chartio have a bunch of open source, crowdsourced books on like how to run a cloud data warehouse. And this time last year, we were like, right, we're going to make a data team and we're going to do things properly. And it's like, I do not know how to do that. I really need to learn real quick. So downloaded those ebooks and was going through them, and they talked about this thing called DBT.
Right.
Oh, this sounds interesting. And then went on a weekend long bender just reading the entire doc site, a solid chunk of the discourse, every blog post, and was like, right, let's load this in. Got very, very excited, and just stayed at peak excitement from then on.
And what has that been like? Like how has the conversation changed within Education Perfect? I imagine there's been like road bumps and things haven't been perfect, but like, how would you characterize it kind of broadly?
I think that our data journey before this time last year, when we started taking this seriously, was always very ad hoc. We were running queries against production. We had to keep all of our stuff inside of like a 20 or 30 second limit, because otherwise we'd take the site down and I would get yelled at. And we didn't have any consistency. We didn't have any reliability. We'd be a great, the living example of what not to do, really. I don't know whether anyone watched Nadia's presentation at Coalesce last year, but the go-to story is that one of our colleagues asked her a question, didn't get an immediate reply because Nadia was on lunch, asked me the same question, and we both came back 2 hours later with just absolutely different numbers. There was no relationship whatsoever. We both got the exact same question, and we just interpreted it differently because we each had our own reckons of what the words meant. And so Nadia did a great job doing data definitions last year, bringing a bit of sense to the chaos. And so now we've got to the point that we have a shared understanding of what words mean, which is huge. And we also have these handful of dashboards that are the canonical answer to questions like how many customers do we have? How many students do we have? How many did we have last week? How many do we have this week? Are they trialing? Are they purchasing? Are they doing something else? And that has been such a huge game changer in terms of how much time we don't have to spend re-implementing everything from first principles once every couple of days when someone comes along with basically the same question, but just differently phrased. And so now we're really starting to look to, we have this trust being built, and how do we maintain it? And
Right.
how do we make our customers, our stakeholders confident that we didn't forget to carry the two and we're actually off by an order of magnitude or something.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. And that if they ask the same question to different people or at different times, right, the answer will be consistent, right? And sort of reflect
Yes.
the agreed upon reality. And it feels like some part of that puzzle, this sort of trust and sort of, this almost organizational puzzle, like some part of the solution there are exposures, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that I'm all in on where I desperately hope exposures are going. And if that's not where they're going,
Okay.
then I'm going to just harangue you until they do go that way.
Okay.
Because I can see a future, and I'm very excited about it. And I think that the most exciting thing about exposures is that it closes out the DAG, basically. Like, you go from sources, you transform them. We do a bunch of work in the back end. Literally no one cares. And so all of that work that we've done, how can we turn that into proof of work, basically, to say this is good, not just because we say it's good, but because we have all of these tests that say it's good, and we have a marker on this that says this is a high quality dashboard. We stand behind it. You can make business decisions on this comfortably. If that ever turns from a green tick to a red thing, then let us know. We'll be notified, but just so you know, it'll be something that you need to take with a grain of salt. But really taking all that stuff that we've done behind the scenes and saying, you don't have to just trust this because you like us and you think we're great and we're doing our best. Actually, a real indicator of accuracy.
So there must be some problem or like some set of problems that are really hairy and really tricky for you right now, for you to be like have so much energy and to have so much excitement about like the future of some part of DBT. Can you talk a little bit about what the problems are and like what it is about them that makes a potential solution so exciting?
Yeah, so the big thing that I'm excited about with Expo, and in particular the metadata tiles that come out of Dbt Cloud, which we're on the beta of and I'm really excited about. I think what's really exciting about that is that one of the problems that we have is that we've done this data definition work, and the part of Nadia's presentation last year that we got to the end of, like, we still don't have a good answer for this. We're trying to work it out. Is that last mile of, we have all of the words, we have definitions for them, but how do you make them play nicely in a report without having like 80 character long column names that are the true definition of what the thing is and what it means and in what context you can trust it. But because what the problem you've got to solve is that people, if they know what they're looking for, they could go and look for it. But really, you want to put it like right in front of their eyeballs. You want to say, hey, you're on this report, and here's some things you need to know.
Right.
And so where I'm hoping that we can see exposures go in the future is maybe you call out a couple of key pieces of metadata, like we've got the descriptions for the reports. Those are built into Mode anyway, but taking it that little bit further of, here's like the 3 key columns, and here's what they mean. And can we link out to DBT docs from there? Can we do things like that? And also just the trust factor of saying this data is all up to date. Because what we're doing at the moment, we've got a couple of dashboards where the top of the dashboard is a single column with a single row that just is the max modified date of one of the tables, because that is the best we can do right now of giving an indicator of freshness. And so that on its own is actually really powerful to say, hey, this data's fresh.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Like these are in some ways like organizational problems of uncertainty, right? Like to be thinking of like a transformation tool as the hammer that's going to hit the nail of like internal organizational uncertainty is like kind of remarkable, right? Like I'm excited hearing your vision. Like what is when you think about folks who are maybe like hearing about exposures for the first time today, like right now, what kind of, how would you advise that person to kind of get from where they are today to where you are today, and then into kind of what your vision for the future is? Like, what is that journey like?
Yeah, for sure. I'm talking a big game about the hypothetical future, which is great, because I think, especially like this, the great thing about DBT is that it's an open source product. This all happens in the open, and so if you want something, you can help shape it. And so I guess there's like a couple of things that anyone has bandwidth to really focus on at any one time and help guide. You can't do it with everything, but this is my thing, it turns out. And so that's the first thing. So I would encourage everyone to get on board early, because if you do, then you can be a part of shaping it to be the way you want it to be. But even right now, it is useful to see which parts of your DAG are actually mission critical and which parts are like nice to haves and they should be good because everything should be good. But which ones are driving the dashboard that the CEO gets emailed once every couple of days? And so if I was building one exposure, then I would choose, and we did in fact do this, we chose the dashboard. Like we did this, how many students are enrolled, how many schools are there, we just picked that one, and it was already like the dashboard we link out to the most, and so it made the most sense to make it the first one we did, because then we really ran into the rough edges of what it can do, what it can't do, what we should try to push it to do in the future, instead of like I assume that people in at Fishtown who have been developing exposures have done let's just pick a dashboard at random and throw a couple of things in. Like everyone does that. That's table stakes. To really get the value out of it, I think you do pick something that's on the critical path and really lean into it, and then use that to guide the problems you're trying to solve. But what we've found useful from that already is we changed some stuff the other day, and like, does this impact anything that we're going to care about? And so we could go in and see, no, it's not, it doesn't feed into any of our exposures. So
that's
like all the DBT tests pass, but it's also what happens once you get out into the real world, where like DBT can't test our mode models, and it's probably not its job to. Definitely not its job to, but we should still give it a bit of a sniff test and say, is this going to break?
I like that. The two things there that just seem so obviously true and correct to me are, one, like the first question is like, where's the business impact, right? Like how can we as like an analytics team impact business in positive ways? Like what's the shortest line from here to there? And the second part, which I hadn't thought about until literally right now, is good exposures coverage is going to start to create like second order behavior change and second order conversations, right? Like, is what we're doing now reflecting or feeding into or feeding out of this existing like uncertainty reduction structure? That's really cool.
Yeah, I was talking to Jeremy yesterday about the maturity level parameter on the exposures, and he said that he was glad that we were using it because he had to fight to keep it in, and I couldn't imagine a world where that's not part of it. I mean, it's not shown in the metadata tiles right now, which I will talk to you about later, but I see a world where maybe 6 months from now, we've got our most important dashboards all have an exposure tile, and they're all green, and they say this data is fresh and you can trust it, and we stand behind it. And then that sort of acts as a signal of itself that if you come to a report that doesn't have one of those tiles at the top, maybe you take that as an indicator that this is good for a job, but it's maybe not good for every job. We were also talking about the fact that the same combination of models and sources going into one dashboard could be a really rock solid presentation, and then on those same models interpreted differently on a different report could be, you had a question and we don't actually have a good answer for it. This is our closest guess, but you really shouldn't be using this as the cornerstone of your work, which seems like you can set a clock by it, that any dashboard that I throw together in 10 minutes, I'm like, this is close.
Right.
I'll come back in 3 months and everyone will be using it for things that it was not meant to do. And I'm like, I wish you hadn't done that.
Yeah. Wow. Right. Because it's a little bit a matter of almost like culture change, where folks who are very used to seeing this status indicator, especially if it's green, right, the lack of it is going to start to be a signal of its own. Like,
I hope so. I mean,
Yeah.
that's forecasting, but that's where I see it going. Is
I like, yeah, I think you're right about that. Rad. Now I'm like, I'm in a moment of reverie. Oh, this has just been incredible. I super appreciate you talking to me today, and all of
Sure.
your feedback and future feedback, I'm sure, about the exposures sort of project and the metadata toolkit more broadly. Is there anything you'd like to close with, or anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
No, I think, like I said, I'm really demonstrably excited about all of this. I think that the thing I would say is that this is worth doing at least once or twice, just so that you can get a feel for it as well in your contexts. I think that there's a lot of stuff that you can do in the future, but I think even right now there are a couple of useful things. Whether or not you're on the metadata tile beta or not, you can already use it to check, if I change this, is it going to break things downstream? And that itself has already saved our butt a couple of times. And so that's a win. And then there's this whole world of other opportunities. Yeah. Especially if you're on Dbt Cloud.
That's right. Very good. All right. Joel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm back. In case, all right. Oh, hold on. Joel, here we are. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Hello, everyone. It's me again. Joel, let me thank you again, live this time. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Really glad you're here now. Really glad we had a chance to chat and make that little conversation for the first ever staging. So now, my friends, my DBT neighbors, why don't you sit and I'll spin you a yarn about how we can go from where we are today to having status tiles, all of our very own. Okay. So here we go. It's a dashboard. You probably have many like it. This is a dashboard that your internal stakeholders take a look at, maybe every day. But it's worth knowing they've been burned before. All dashboards appear the same from the outside. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of trust baked in to this experience. And the fact is, anybody who looks at dashboards to make big decisions has been burned in the past. So their first inclination isn't to see this and say to themselves, this visualization is wonderful. Oh my, that is a large percentage. No, their perception is, can I trust this? Is this really what I need to be making decisions based on? And the fact is, all of the tests, all of the source freshness that you've spent so much time building and putting together in the back end is totally invisible to them here. So what we need to do is we need to find some way of shouting into the DBT project, into their like Socratic cave. DBT, we're going to do some stuff. We're going to do some stuff with your models, and sort of make this bigger picture of the outside world clear to the situation. And how do we do that? Well, the way that we start to like shout in is with something we've talked about a lot today, the exposures file. Well, the exposures node, right? Calling it a node is a bit complicated because the exposures node is sort of almost like it's like shining down onto the entire DAG and almost maybe observing the whole DAG. It looks nice sort of in the diagram like this, but the concept is a bit more complicated, right? So we sort of see all of the bits that feed into the final metrics piece, the piece that goes out to that Looker dashboard. And we use the exposure file, which you can see here, to tell the DBT project, like, okay, where is this going? What are we doing with it? How mature is this dashboard? And we can sort of display this in different ways. One of the ways that we display it is actually in the DBT generated documentation itself, which looks like this. And this one is, this can be a bit more built out. You can see it says, okay, what are we going to call it? What's the maturity level? Who is the owner? It's a person with an email address. I personally think that's kind of important. And we've also got this idea of like what models are feeding into this eventual dashboard on the outside. So this is good, but this doesn't do what we need. What we need is something to sit in the habits, in the day-to-day workflow of our data consumers. Because if they have to go to sort of a separate website, a separate page to feel certain, it's not going to work out. So as we've seen elsewhere, like you can see right here, the data health tile sits right in the dashboard. This particular one, we were having some issues when I recorded this, but you can see we get a happy cowboy instead of a skeptical thinking face. This is really good. This is the kind of thing that we've been talking about that's really desirable. We're taking all of the work that's being done by the analytics organization, we're surfacing it in a visible way within the workflow, like right where people are living, right where people are working. This is going to give us better conversations, a better sense of like what we do and what we don't need to do. And it's going to allow the people that we work with to feel more trust in sort of the data reporting in general. As well, we sort of talked about, you saw I talked with Joel about this. In time, this is the sort of thing that can create secondary habits, which is any place where you see this kind of certainty tile is going to indicate like a stamp of approval. And then dashboards and reporting that don't have it will stand out in a different way. Now you can also see that this little see details link, and the see details link is really going to be useful because that's where we end up with this sort of data health landing page, which looks something like this. Normally you'd have the sources row by row, as well as when they were most recently, pardon me, most recently refreshed, sort of more information about our test passing, description, same sort of linking out elsewhere. Okay, awesome. And this also is the kind of thing where you can imagine as an analytics engineer, you're going to feel good even checking this yourself. This is going to cut down on this unpredictable amount of time that would normally take. It's going to visualize, create an interface onto all of this work that in most organizations is currently invisible. Okay, so I think the obvious question here is, how do I get it? Like, how do I get this in my life? Well, the answer is right now, I'm sort of operating as a sort of skin and bones API endpoint, which is not ideal. It's not super scalable. So right now you would sign up for the beta, you'd shoot me a little bit of information. I would take that and wave my magic wand, and then I would get the iframe back to you. And the iframe is pretty much where the magic happens. The iframe is going to call back to us and then display the source freshness and sort of the test results that we talked about before. The next couple of steps we have here on our side, on the production side, is we want to get me out of the equation. Not me like as a thinker, but me as like someone who's like typing out API calls, and instead make this much more self-service, much more accessible, and much more sort of user manipulation friendly. That's the next step for us. But as of right now, the status tile works on Mode. We know it works on Chartio. I saw Matt as well dropped a great screenshot in Slack. If you haven't seen that, thank you so much, Matt. We also know it can work on Looker. It requires a little bit of a custom visualization, which we're super stoked to help you with. And beyond that, it's sort of a, I was trying to find like a happy shrug face, because the fact is the possibilities are sort of endless. I mean, iframes are incredibly flexible and versatile. Anywhere you can meaningfully embed one, you're going to be able to include this status tile. Really interesting is in one of the sort of sample projects we put together of this, I embedded a bunch of these status tiles on just an arbitrary WordPress site to have like almost like a meta dashboard. Again, there's lots of different ways to sort of take advantage of this stuff. We're really excited to work with all of you. Your feedback is going to be really important, and it's going to help us figure out what the longer term version of this is going to look like. So with that being said, please join the beta. We got a short link. Here it is. I think this is also going to get dropped in the Slack channel. And I'm really excited to hear from you. This is something we're super pumped about. And honestly, we're also really pumped about the future. And guess who's going to talk to you about that? My friend and yours, the one and only Drew Banin.
All right. Thanks, Simon. Loved the presentation. I regret that I'm not going to have nearly the emojis, but maybe we'll bring some good energy. We're talking about what's on the way. This is going to be a really fun session. Historically, we've been a little bit guarded about our roadmap, especially as we were early in sort of our life cycle with DBT. But these days, we're really feeling the benefits of exposing, right? More of what we're doing to all of you. We can get your feedback. We can understand the things you like, your pain points. We can't do that if we don't speak openly about what we're working on and what's coming up next. So we're going to talk about the roadmap. And I don't know how other people do roadmaps, but the idea of doing this as a DAG felt good and right to us. So this is a little bit in our heads how we're thinking about it. Right now, we're in the first quarter of the year. And really, our big theme for the entire year is going to be building the foundation. We've really hit a nerve with DBT. There's a lot of amazing use cases that feel really resonant today. There's also use cases that we're excited about addressing in the future. We'll talk about those in a second. But for right at this very moment, it's clear to us that we need to focus on performance, reliability, and a couple other things like sort of the delightfulness of some of the parts of the product. We'll talk about that. So really, a lot of this is use case oriented. When we think about these use cases, the ones we would point to today, outside of, of course, data modeling, really the use cases are about development and deployment in a DBT cloud context. There's a sort of in progress use case around data documentation, I hope many of you have used the docs website, dbt docs generate. Really hoping to pull in some of these metadata artifact threads, really improve the utility of that use case for documentation as well. So over the course of this quarter, performance reliability, we'll talk about it. We're looking to open new doors. And so we talked about exposures and Slim CI and API integrations. We've got a growing team here. We're really excited about the energy we can put behind developing this product. But we also recognize that we can't do it all ourselves. And so when we create tools and things like API endpoints and integrations, it makes it possible for us to create utility in the world, outside of the surface area of the products that we build. We saw an example of what the Mode team is working on by interfacing with one of our APIs. We're excited to see a lot more of that, and we want to invest in it. And some of the other doors that we're looking to open are around kind of more webhooks and orchestration. dbt is one part of a broader data stack, and the better these tools work together, the more powerful the entire system is. So we'll talk about this in a second, but one of the things on our radar is like webhooks and kind of orchestration inside of dbt Cloud from a deployment perspective. I'm excited to hear from some of you about potential use cases. Note that I have not consulted any of the engineers on my team about any of this. It's going to be a surprise to you and a surprise to them. And to me, that helps keep everyone on their toes, keeps us sharp. Just kidding. So the last thing I want to talk about is really, it's kind of the theme of today, and Jeremy kicked us off here. We really need to close the feedback loop around this work that we're doing. We're seeking to open up more of our roadmap in order to create kind of more transparency into the process so that we can get more feedback from all of you about the things you like, the things you hope we could address, really talking about these problems and opportunities, and then try to come up with really rock solid solutions. So we do want to hear from you now and always. We're going to do a better job of reaching out when we've got things in progress to get some early feedback. And certainly don't hesitate to let us know what's on your mind in Slack as well. Okay, so what are we working on right now? Well, when we think about our roadmap, we kind of break things down into 3 buckets. There's kind of researching, developing, and shipping. When we think about the things we're researching right now, because we're working on the product foundations, there's a lot of our work in progress that feels pretty well understood. So as far as researching, this is one of those things I would just love to see threaded up, and I can't wait to follow up in the chat. We're kicking around this idea of adding webhooks to dbt Cloud, such that when your run's complete, you can get a webhook that kicks something off in some other service. I feel like we got a good solution there, but we want to understand the kind of like problems that could solve for you concretely, or maybe the opportunities it unlocks to help us better understand how to build it. When we think about the things we're developing, gosh, I attended and spoke at Coalesce, and one of the talks I really enjoyed was from Ashley Van Name, speaking about what they could do at her organization with dbt. But it wasn't lost on me that performance was an issue. And so we're taking that seriously, and we're working on it. We've got some concrete improvements rolling out already, and we're going to keep improving it. We want to make sure that dbt scales well for very large projects in the Dbt Core open source world. Some of the other threads we're going to keep tugging are a more stable and delightful IDE. We're rolling out some changes steadily. We're doing that this quarter. We're going to keep doing it throughout the course of the year. And the last one that's kind of in progress right this moment is really polishing up our Spark integration inside of dbt Cloud. Really excited about the kinds of things we're seeing out of Databricks and the kinds of things you can do with Spark SQL. And so excited to talk to you about if you're Spark users and interested in using dbt Cloud. And finally, shipping, this is a bucket because, hitting the merge button is an atomic operation, but shipping only begins when you hit the merge button. We're looking to do more betas. We're looking to get more feedback. We're looking to iterate based on that feedback. And so some things we're shipping right now are indeed Slim CI and exposures, trying to work out exactly how those things should work. We actually have just shipped service account API tokens. So, in terms of interfacing with dbt Cloud, I think you should all have access, if you're on the team or enterprise plans in dbt Cloud, to service account API tokens that kind of belong to an account instead of a user. And also just like a lot of infrastructure upgrades, making sure that we've got a stable and reliable foundation which to build upon. Okay. Oh, this is funny. We usually talk about DAGs, but there's a cycle in this DAG and it's intentional. So there's a cycle in this graph and it's intentional. Yeah, there's a feedback loop here, and I wanted to call it out by breaking the DAG. It's a cycle, and we're going to iterate with your feedback. Okay, so what is up next? let's break this down into kind of two categories. We'll talk about cloud first, and then we'll talk about core. So on the cloud side, we're going to keep tugging on this IDE thread forever, like we kind of talked about. We want to make it really delightful and performant and reliable. Some of the other interesting things that are going to come up starting next quarter is a lot of work around Git provider parity. So if you use dbt cloud, there's kind of an inconsistent set of capabilities across GitHub and GitLab and other Git providers. We really want to create parity in the feature set available for each of those integrations. And on the dbt core side, we're really marching towards a 1.0 release of dbt core. There is a list of tickets that you can see in the dbt repo if you're curious, what's involved in 1.0ing. The big thing to say is that once we 1.0, we're really going to commit to stability in terms of the eyes that dbt core provides to really encourage people to build on top of it. So this, this is Q2 bucket. We're going to ship 1.0 when we've done all the 1.0 tasks, but we're hoping to be making some progress there over the next couple months. So as far as rounding out, existing support, it's just going to be a lot of parity and stability in the existing surface area of the application. When we think about the next steps we want to take, we are going to make some improvements to the CI/CD deployment workflows inside of dbt cloud. There are some often asked for things like the ability to run a job when a pull request is merged, or cancel an existing run if new code is merged. And one of the other things we get asked about a lot is environment variables inside of dbt cloud. I'm really excited to supply that kind of tooling to help people build out and customize their deployments in dbt cloud. There's more to come on the CI/CD front, and we're excited to maybe show you some betas when we have them ready. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about is just setting the stage. We talked about exposures and metadata, and we all feel the import of understanding the nature of our data. I think we're going to unlock some new use cases into the future with these investments in metadata, and we want to keep investing there to be able to address those use cases in the future. And the other thing, longtime dbt blog readers will have heard the term client server before. dbt actually already ships with a sort of dbt server. It's used inside of the IDE. And I know a couple of folks are using it in sort of more advanced deployments of dbt. We're gonna really invest in this sort of dbt server and make sure that it can be a really good way for teams to deploy dbt in sort of more complex deployment environments. I'm going to keep this one vague so as to leave a lot to the imagination, but if you do a search for blog.getdbt.com space client server, maybe you find some of our early thinking about it. So this is sort of the version of the roadmap that we want to talk about today. It is not a list of every single thing we're going to work on. There's certainly a lot that we're going to do that is represented here, but I wanted to paint with a pretty broad stroke, a pretty fat marker, as the Basecamp team would say, the things that we're cooking up into the future. And we certainly want to hear a lot from you all about what feels resonant or things that are on your minds that kind of aren't on our radar yet. And we're going to keep you in the loop as we roll this stuff out. We'd love to get your feedback on it early so we can iterate. So this was our first ever staging event. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you all got something really great out of it too. dbt continues to be a community-driven endeavor. We hope to work with many of you as we bring a lot of the things that we spoke about today into fruition. Over the next couple of weeks and months, we're going to be looking to open up more of our roadmap to the public. I won't lie to you, I'm a little bit nervous about that, but as a company, we value transparency, and we really do want to know what you're thinking about the things that we're building.